Good morning, everyone. This is the initial episode of Lifelong Educators. Lifelong Educators is going to meet you weekly in just a few weeks in order to form a community where we educators and learners can get together and talk about all of the issues in education today. As you know, things have been changing rapidly. We went from brick and mortar schools to in-person camps. All of a sudden, because of the pandemic, we were all online. Now, there were good things about that as well as bad things about that. So today we have two very esteemed educational explorers who are going to tell you a few things about themselves, and then we will get into this conversation. I hope that those of you out in our community will join in on the chat and we can field your question to these two experts that we have here today. So first of all, let me introduce Dotan Tamir. He is an educational explorer and also the creator of Clickto, which is an online educational format. So Dotan, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
All right, happy to be here. So excited for our first show, and thanks for the intro, Jackie. So my name is Dotan. I'm based out of Tel Aviv in Israel. And, I've been doing education since I was 16. So for the past 22 years, mostly informal education. And I'd love to tell more about it as we go forward, as we move on.
Okay, great. And we also have here today Josh Chernikoff, who is also an educational explorer and also a serial entrepreneur. So take it away, Josh.
Thank you, Jackie. I've been called a lot of things. Educational explorer is a new one, so I'm going to take that one and use it. I appreciate it. It has been a journey in education, from not being a very good student to starting a tutoring as an entrepreneur, then to starting an enrichment company as an entrepreneur, selling both of those companies, and then getting introduced to my friend here, Dotan, back when the pandemic started. So that is one positive thing that came out of it for me. And from there, I was able to join the team as a senior advisor for Clickto and really believe in cohort-based courses, and excited to have these conversations on this show.
Great. And as for myself, I'm an associate professor of communication and media arts at Western Connecticut State University. Now, the big cry in the university, all of the universities and the high schools and the elementary schools, has been, we've got to return to normal. We've got to return to the classroom and the brick and mortar life and all of that. But what I want to ask you two is, are there things that have gotten better? Are there things that we have learned through the shutdown of the pandemic that we can take away and make an even better normal in our educational atmosphere now?
I'll tell you a little bit about the way I look at education. I look at education as a magical progress, something that brings growth to people. And, education can be looked at from angles of grades and exams and skills and all that stuff, which is very important as well. But for me, the basic is this magical experience of learning something together, exploring new areas, new topics. And I think when we go back to that fundamental part of education, then we can ask that question of what works better, what doesn't work, what can work online, what doesn't work online. So to me, it started with the pandemic, when after having a summer camp, overnight camp about STEM education for kids from all over the world for so many years, and seeing that magic happens in person, the pandemic came and we said, let's see if that magic can happen online. So we tried it, and we had kids in a virtual room with an instructor, and the magic happened. The kids had fun, the instructor had fun. There was growth, there was excitement, there was learning. So to me, it was eye-opening to see that this is actually working without being physically in the same place. Now, we all coming from different generations, but I think the generation of kids today, for them, it's kind of natural. For them, it was just, almost the same in some way, because the screen is really a window of communication for them, and they were born like that. So going back to normal, what is the normal? I think for kids, learning with peers through screen is as normal almost as learning with their peers in person. Of course, there are differences and there are some things that you cannot do online, when there are also some things that you cannot do in person. But I think the basic question is, what are our goals? What are we trying to achieve? Can we do it fun? Can we do it engaging?
Well, Josh, you have described yourself, I believe, or someone has described you as a business dad. And as the chief business operator of Clickto, you also have gone into the classroom and you talked about these aha moments that you had when you were actually engaged with the kids. Does that any way reflect what Dotan just said?
Yeah, absolutely. So Dotan has always been to me since day one, future man. Future man had to convince me that this really was the future, but he did. And there are times where he has to pull me back, and I try not to get in the mode that it has to be in person or online. Both of us come from an in-person learning experience, Dotan camps, me in Richmond and aftercare. So I think the point of this, is that I saw for myself with my daughter when she was doing an art class online, and the aha moment I think you're referencing, and there have been many. She was doing an art class and I walked upstairs. This was deep, in April, the pandemic was roaring when we were scrambling as parents, and her iPad, she had adjusted it so that it was kind of like above her hand. And of course, I go in there and I'm like, Camila, you're supposed to be looking at the iPad. And she said, no, Poppy. And she kind of turned it off. She said, the teacher wanted to see our hands. And I said, of course. So the teacher was not only looking at their hands to see how closely they were holding the pencil and all that stuff, but how was her drawing? And so the teacher was able to go one by one. This is a class of 18 kids. And so I think that this is an example of an activity where you can potentially do it as well online as you can do in person, and you can make potentially a global impact. I mean, the instructor was in New York. Camila, our daughter, was in Washington, D.C., and who knows where everybody was joining from. So, as a dad, I had that aha moment. Of course, again, she was right. That happens a lot. And it was a great experience. And again, it kind of led me closer to understanding kind of what Dotan is talking about, which is that there can be two experiences here in learning. The in-person is important. The online is a pandemic opportunity as well.
Well, I must say, as an instructor myself, that I did encounter problems with the online transition. I would turn on the computer and my students who are college age, so they're older, some of them would show up and I'd say, you must have your cameras on. And then they say, oh, the internet went out, or this happened, or I could hear them like mowing the lawn outside when they were supposed to be in class. So how do you get engagement going on with your students when you are dealing with just the screen?
So there are so many options, right? And we are still exploring and discovering this. And what I'm really excited about when, thinking about our future shows and the guests that we're going to bring in here is that discussion. I think we're just at the beginning. If we were coming really from the future, and I know Josh likes to call me future man, but I still don't know everything about the future. But if we were 5 years from now, looking back, we would probably say, oh, those people at the 2021, they didn't know how to do engaging and fun online classes. All the tools that we have today are quite amazing. So this is just the beginning. And we're here to go on this journey and explore and learn. But I think there are already some experts out there, and some of them are going to be here with us to discuss it as we go forward with the show. I've seen this, Josh just described one cool activity, one cool way to do it with the iPad and the camera, something that you say it can work online. It actually works better online in some ways, because the teacher in a in-person setting wouldn't be able to see in front of them 18 drawings happening at the same time and really monitoring everything in the same time. But online they can. Now, I think education, and I said it before, and I'll say it again and again, education has to be fun. And to make it fun, it has to include games, it has to be interactive. It cannot be just, the instructor talks and lectures and then the students just watch. And there has to be a sense of community and feedback all the time. And I think that's the biggest difference. And we'll talk a lot about the difference between self-paced learning courses, self-paced courses to cohort-based courses where there's a group. I think the biggest difference between learning on your own pace, is that you don't have that feedback. And this feedback must be there in order to push you forward, in order to show you that you have learned, to reflect to you that you are learning, that you are also, giving you answers to questions or asking you questions and you're going to answer. So all that kind of interaction has to be and can be there in an online, sometimes even better than an in-person setting.
Wow. You are so right, because one of the things that I found worked better for me on the online format was that I could make direct contact with my students. We can have the conversation. I could see their work, and the other students could click right into our one-to-one contact, and they would engage because of that. And so when the other professors said to me, "How could you teach that course online?" I said, it kind of worked better online. So that was something that I discovered, but I wanted to bring up a point. I was told early on, and we had no preparation for, in order to prepare for the online experience. But in a workshop, they said that the students needed to feel part of the class. They needed to feel that whole community of the class. I think I did the best I could, putting together exercises where they had to work together. But what can you tell me about creating a community of the class online?
As we're sitting here having this conversation, we're talking about this, and I'm thinking we're doing right now exactly what we are talking about, in the sense of, this is our first show. We're trying to create a community that's going to interact. We're interacting. We're hoping to make an impact in the lives of the people around us who also believe in this cohort-based learning. So we're actually a perfect experiment for what we're talking about, because we're going to do this on a weekly basis. So I think what you have to do is, we have the benefit, because we're potentially talking about enrichment, or for adults, professional development courses that they want to take, is that not to take anything away from school, but you got to learn a lot of stuff in school that you don't want to learn. But when it comes to enrichment, professional development, you might be able to take courses that you really want to learn. My daughter is super into art. I've enrolled myself in some courses that I never thought I would take, back in Spanish courses, trying to learn those. So I think you get the opportunity to take courses that you want to be in. You get to interact with people who have that same energy, and then we get to make an impact on each other's lives. So hopefully that answers your question of how do we do this, which is, we do it by all bringing this same positive energy to wanting to learn online, and then holding each other accountable.
I think that, and I like what you say, Josh. What we talk, the title of the show is Lifelong Educators, right? And we believe that educators have the answer. They have been doing that for a long time in a brick and mortar setting. They just need to understand and learn how to adjust what they are so good at to online. So let's say you are an instructor in a class, and you give an exercise to the class now for 20 minutes, work on something. And sometimes you tell the class, please get into pairs and work on stuff with your peer. But when the instructor moved online, they had no idea how to do that, really. No clue how to really get that working in an online setting. But it can work. And I saw examples of this kind of exercise in pairs work amazingly. And sometimes, and when it's a class, it's always the one that sits next to you. So it's based on where you sit, but online you can choose, or the instructor can actually choose for you who you're going to be with. It can be random. There are many cool things that can create a sense of community, because you asked about how do we create this sense of community, of being a part of it. So I think as much as you can give your students, your learners, the feeling that they are others around them that are having the same progress, that would make them feel that they're part of it.
Yeah.
And one other comment about community that I wanted to make, Dotan and I think have been lucky enough to be in this space in Richmond and camps for 10 years, made a lot of friends. And when it comes to community, I think as we get this going, our hope is that all these, enrichment providers that we know and that we don't know come on board, and we can not only create a community by them being assigned to say, hey, you don't know this one and you don't know this one, so we're going to get you guys together. But Dotan and I want to be able to introduce folks. I mean, I know amazing chess companies, like Silver Knights or Felix, who does chess in Westchester, New York. And we can connect these folks to say, this is working well in the chess world. And, we got future Picassos in Connecticut, and we've got, Marcia down at Young Rembrandts in Maryland, and say, you guys should talk because there's so many kids out there. You're not competing, you can learn from each other. So, I think the idea here is to create a community for the kids for sure. But then, also we really believe that we can create a community of enrichment providers as well.
Wow. I mean, that sounds great. And I've got to tell you that I did use the whole community aspect in one of my courses. And the grades were so high that the average grade was an A-. I got in trouble for that because I'm not supposed to be doing that. But they got together and they did the work online with each other, and it worked out well.
Awesome.
So, yeah. But let me ask you a question. If we never had the pandemic, we never shut down, never had to go to virtual, do you think that teachers would still be online, or do you think they would opt to be in person at this point?
I have a very clear answer. I would be, walking the paths of the summer camp right now and not even thinking about online. I think the world has shifted, and and everything around it has shifted for us as well. And personally, I didn't believe in online education before I saw it in action, before I had to try. So it changed my mind. It changed the way I see the future. I think that we would have got there. It would have taken like 10 years maybe for the world to reach the point that was achieved in a few months, because thanks to the pandemic.
There are so many ifs without the pandemic. One of them, that comes to mind quickly is that Dotan and I will be meeting in San Diego for the second time. We had brunch in DC at one point at a wonderful restaurant on a random Saturday because he was in town, but we'll be at ASU GSV, this amazing conference come Sunday. So that's.
Can you tell us what that conference is, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing conference where folks in the education space, very focused on technology and certainly democratizing education, get together. So I'm a first timer. I believe Dotan's a first timer. We've even spoken to a mutual friend who's been there so many times. He's not going this time. I think he's leaving it up to us to report back. But there are so many ifs with the pandemic. Luckily, fortunately, we're all happy and healthy right now to have gotten through it. And so I think we have to take this pandemic opportunity and what we've been given as, explorers in education to create this community and make an impact. And I'm with you, darn it. I wish 5, 6, 7 years ago, I know I had the idea of taking this enrichment online and putting cameras into classrooms, but I was, working on and in the business, couldn't focus on it. But now we do have this opportunity. So I'd be right along there with you, probably worlds away. You'd be doing the camp thing in person. I'd be doing the enrichment thing in person. But now we get to come together online and in person, on Sunday and hopefully build this thing.
And I want to follow up more on this topic because I think, we're looking at education. The whole, new gear,
new technology.
Yeah,
I got to get better lights. You got to watch out for your gear. We're learning. We're learning, right? Lifelong educators.
Right. And you know what? This is also going to be one of the topics of the show. What technology you want to use, because that's also part of doing good education when you're online. And so I think the whole world is changed. The workspace has changed, and families are moving away from city centers because people can now work remotely, at least in a hybrid mode, and that all connects to the fact that remote became accessible. This is something that the technology is not new. It was there. Video technology, communication, everything kind of was there in place. That's why the effect of the lockdowns and the effect of the pandemic was rough on the health side, the health angle, but people were still able to continue getting educated, continue work, continue getting different kind of services. So the technology was there, but the whole progress of using the technology got accelerated. And if you want to know what I think that will be the future, the how it's going to look like in 5 years time, or even 3 years time, is that they say that about 1 billion people are going to be taking online courses. When I say online courses, I mean courses over video with a community, with a group. And those 1 billion are going to be kids, are going to be adults, are going to be senior citizens, are going to be everyone. And so we are really looking at this future, this opportunity, and understand that the transition from offline to online is wide. It's not just technology. It's how to do it engaging, how to build a business around it, how to get good feedback, how to support the students, all that stuff. So, and that's why we're not just going to discuss, we're going to discuss less technology over those shows and more how to do it right.
One thing that the 1 billion people, when Dotan says that, we were worlds away, but we were both in the same space here. And I think we had the same feelings that we weren't necessarily competing with the people he was in the camp space and I was in the enrichment space, because there are so many kids when you're doing in person. Now you take it to online and we're talking about 1 billion people. So for the enrichment providers that we get to talk to and the camp providers that we get to talk to, our goal, I think, as we create this community, is to think that the community, yes, used to be potentially, if you had a brick and mortar on Main Street, in Wheeling, West Virginia, that's the people that you were catering to. But now, if you're in Wheeling, West Virginia, and you get yourself a mic like Dotan's got and those headphones like Dotan's got, you can really be a rock star educator around the world. And why not do it? Because there are 1 billion people out there that want to learn from you. And so, he said that number and it always kind of comes back. And I'm like, I can't believe there are 1 billion people out there that we can reach and make an impact on. So thank you for bringing that number back up. I think it's really important.
Hey, Josh, you asked, why not do it? I've encountered other professors that could answer your question. They did not do it. Yeah. I had one professor in our university couldn't figure out how to do the tech. And so she had the students come in and sit and watch her on a screen in one classroom as she lectured in the classroom next door, because she didn't know how to get her skills, her lecture skills onto that screen and deal with the tech at the same time. Yeah. So what do you have in store for people like that?
I mean, I'll just answer the first question, which I think was, why not? And I'll answer it from, the path that I know most, which is being an entrepreneur. And I'll be interested to hear what Dotan has to say. But as an entrepreneur, you got 1 million things on your plate. And if your business was an in-person business and you think you just have to get back to in-person because that's the only thing you're going to be doing, then I think it's tough to carve out any time to do online. And then when you try and do online the right way, at least at this point, you've got to figure out how to register the people. And then you've got to send them invites. And then you got to make sure the technology is right. And then you got to get this. And then you got to do that. But there are great, as we know, platforms out there that make sure you don't have to do all that. So I would say one of the biggest challenges of the entrepreneurs that I've talked to in the enrichment space is just finding the time. And when you look at it is, I've got to do that and that and that and that and that. Yeah, it seems like a lot. But when you find the right platform, it might not be that hard to find an hour a day every week to go online and reach that worldwide audience. I think that's one of the first challenges.
I think the one solution to the problem that you bringing up, Jackie, is a community, right? I mean, we learn from a community, we learn from each other, and we learn from experts, who are the teachers in some cases or others. And this is what we're doing here. We're here to educate the community of lifelong learners. Who's invited to this community? Those professors like the one that you just described that have, they're less tech savvy and they need the help and the support, but also those pros and experts that are doing it and know what the tools to use and know what the best methods to do. And they're all going to be part of our community where they can learn from each other. And we are going to give this platform for people to meet, for people to discuss. People are invited to get on our shows live and ask the questions and get answers right away. And this is how it's gonna work, right? It takes time for people to learn and become experts at something new for them. And we'll give them the best practices, the success stories. We'll show them how to do it. And then meet them on our community, on our Facebook group, to really help them one-on-one and show them, give them the right tools.
And one thing I think we can also talk to them about, Dotan, being honest, is we can also tell them the opposite of success stories, and we can tell them the opposite of best practices. I mean, we can explain to them the mistakes that we made going online, that other people made going online. You got to fail fast, but you're going to fail. So let's get through it. So I think we can also expose in a good way, what the challenges are. And you don't have to make some of the mistakes that we made, although they got us here. So, we're grateful for them, but there's also mistakes to be made, and that will happen.
Well, Josh, can you share perhaps one or two of those mistakes? Because some of the people that are joining our community today might have made those same mistakes.
There's an interesting one. I don't know if this is the one Dotan's thinking about, but he knows I love to tell this story, is that back in March, when the pandemic hit, both of us thought that we should bring all of in his camp, so to speak, his camp, he wanted to take camps online, and the enrichment world, I wanted to take enrichment providers online. And so I thought, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to build a platform that does all this. It's easy. I can do this, And then in Israel, Dotan's sitting there thinking the same thing. And he today has a phenomenal platform that he's helped build and that I'm a part of. I'm fortunate for that. And my platform did make it. And so, it was a lesson learned. And actually, we've taken some pieces and things that we did when I tried to create this platform. And I think we're hopefully going to use them, to help us as a group, as a community. But I think the lesson learned there was, don't necessarily go out and try and build the whole platform yourself, leave that to people who have those minds. And so that was a learning experience for me, which was, go online for sure, but you don't have to build the whole dang platform for the world.
I wish somebody had told me that at the beginning of the pandemic.
We're all learning, right? We're all learning.
Yeah. So to both of you, could you paint a picture of what the future of learning might look like? I know that's a broad question, but what possibilities do you see, and what benefits, what outcomes?
I think the democratizing the education globally is one of our missions. And I think this is also an incredible change that we're going to see. The fact that engineer that works for HP in Spain, his day job is going to the office and do engineering stuff, but he's passionate about teaching. He loves teaching and he's great at it, but he could never do it before, because that would mean, go to somewhere, drive somewhere a few times a week for a few hours. Now he can become a teacher and he can work. No, he doesn't have to have his own school, because he doesn't have time to do all the marketing and business and enrollment and payment collection and finding students and all that and all the admin. But he can work for a school in New York that teaches engineering, to people that want to upskill their game and to get better career. And that school knows how to get the students and do the marketing and the business side, but they can hire the HP educator or future educator from Spain. So, and then their students also don't have to be from New York, right? They could be from Asia, they could be from Europe, they could be from Africa. So this is now, there's not anymore you can be really and be part of the learning community, really, really everywhere. And that's a game changer, because that will open up new topics, that will open up new opportunities, that will open up new business opportunities for so many people, and let people, take that passion for education to the next level.
All right. So you almost described my PhD program. I thought it was one of the best.
Dr. Future Man.
Right. But I thought it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. My school got instructors from all over the world, so they could get the best in philosophy, the best in communications. I was John Waters' teaching assistant, and that was an awesome experience. So we were online all year because people had families, they had full-time jobs. And then we met in a very small town in the Alps for the summer and did our on-the-ground work there. It was a hybrid situation. Now, help me out here. It is not as respected in academia as a brick and mortar degree from, say, Columbia or Brooklyn College, wherever. So how can someone like me, who has taken the dip into online education and found it very beneficial, how can I create credibility around the program that I engaged in?
I think, I have a lot of respect to academia. I think it's always a cycle. There are the early adopters, there are the followers. And in this case, the early adopters might not be the academia. It might be the other organizations that are more entrepreneurial, that can move fast, that see that as a business opportunity. And they'll get credibility if they do good job, if they'll teach well, if they'll have good, they'll become well reputed. And then the academia will see that and say, well, if that works, we should do that. We should try it again. Now, it takes time. We are actually, we understand. That's why we call ourselves the Lifelong Educators Show, because we understand that education is not just in school system, not just in academia, it's everywhere. So we first see the opportunity for people to get educated outside of the school system and academia. This is the newest, the biggest opportunity that opened up with the world's change that we see.
Wow. Well, I just got tenure, Dotan, so I'm doing something right.
You're doing something right. Yeah, for sure. But you're here thinking with us about the disruption in the enrichment space and the professional development space, potentially for adults, and potentially academia and colleges are also in the crosshairs, in the sense of, as we were in the middle of it, it didn't seem like it was broken. And maybe it wasn't broken, but maybe it needs to be broken and put back together in a way that in person is available to those people who can do in person, but online is available for those around the world, or potentially a mile away from a school that might not just be able to get to that school and take an online course. So, I think the community we're going to try and build is going to be about making impact, and maybe it'll cross over into lots of different areas, including academia, as we think differently about education.
Hope so. So how does this all tie into your mission statement? You've talked about it a little bit and you've touched upon different aspects, but if you could go into it a little deeper and tell us how this affects our community.
Well, I think the core goal of education is making an impact, right? I mean, we probably all agree on that. So we are coming from an education background. This is what motivates and drives us, this change and impact that education creates. And we are here to build the infrastructure, the platform, and to help more and more and more people get into that impact cycle. So, one of our KPIs as a company is not just number of customers or number of classes, revenue that we see as a company. It's also the number of people that are being impacted, the number of people that get educated around the world. And if you look on our website, and that would be an interesting something to talk about. Also, we have a guest planned to speak about the sustainability goals that Clickto relates to, and I'm talking about the UN sustainability goals. And we relate to 6 of them, and it's on our about us on the website, and we look at them almost every day to see that we are aligned with that. I think we could choose to do a lot of different things in our lives, Josh, myself, you, but we chose for some reason to be involved in education, which is challenging, which takes time. It's not instant. It's a progress, but I think the fruits of it are the best. What you can achieve, the feeling of accomplishment that you can have when dealing with education is something that you cannot get anywhere else.
What do you have to say about that, Josh?
I was thinking about all the things that I meant to do other than getting into education, but somehow this not very good student from Washington, D.C. got into this, and I love it. And I think you can boil it down to really one word, and Dotan used it, and I don't think you can overuse it, which is impact. And we really want to make an impact, not only on the kids, of course, but I think what we see is also making an impact on our peers, on our fellow entrepreneurs, on the PhDers that we get to interact with, so making education available to everyone, certainly those are the kids, but also thinking about how we can make the ability to educate available to everybody as well. So we're trying to do both sides of the coin here, and we're going to be successful, and it might take us a while, but we're ready for that. And we're lucky enough also to have some fantastic people around us, a bunch of them who are going to be on the shows here. So it's going to be fun and educating.
Great. Yeah. Well, I have a question that has to do with this from Pablo in North Carolina. And he says, do you think that in time, academia will invest more in tech capabilities over brick and mortar buildings? And how would that affect, here's the big question, fundraising for education?
Wow. If you ask me if they should, then they should. I mean, academia should invest more in tech capabilities over buildings. I started to to flow with my imagination after we discussed academia and what does it mean for academia. And I started to think about student exchange programs, right? Where if you are a student in some college or university, you might want to take a student exchange program to go somewhere else, meet others, have a different an opportunity to explore some other spaces and get education from somebody else. But with online, a student exchange program could be something that you are always participating at. You can always take a course from university in South America, next semester from university in Israel. We have some great universities here, or university somewhere else, as part of your degree, as part of your being a part of your university. And that's something, there needs to be an infrastructure for that. There needs to be a system. So universities, academia, they have to invest in such opportunities in order to be leaders in education, to stay the leaders in education. How will it affect fundraising for education? I think when we look at the numbers and the estimations for the size of the education economy, we see predictions that it will double up in just 3 to 4 years from now, because education has such an amazing opportunity when transitioning to digital. It's still, most of education is still, old fashioned, old school, and there's so much more to do. That's why, if we really had a time machine to go 10 years, 15 years to the future.
You don't?
I do, but I can, I can tell you. But if we had that, then then I hope that we'll probably not even recognize how schools look like, how academia look like, how student daily life look like. I hope. Yeah. I think there's a lot of space for change.
The question, should colleges, and universities invest in? Absolutely. Less buildings, absolutely. But I wanted to kind of touch on what Dotan said here. And because I want to make sure that people understand as we're out there talking about the future of online education, that we still believe in in-person education. I thought that was a really cool comment. Dotan's talking about online exchange programs, and we're actually helping a great program in Utah do this really well. But as he was talking about that, my mind wandered to the 6 absolutely glorious months I spent as a sophomore in Prague, doing my study abroad program, right? And nothing can replace that. But just think about it. I could have also done online exchange programs, 8-week online exchange programs, and done something in Sweden, and done something in South Africa, and done something in Taiwan. And so now, because we can think differently and have seen that this is possible, we can do these things. So, I just wanted to kind of emphasize again that, we're not saying it has to be one or the other. It can absolutely be both when it comes to the future of education.
Ooh.
Jackie, do you want to start a new company called Evergreen Exchange Program? We can I think it's a good idea.
I think so too.
And I'll run the in-person part. First tour is Prague. Whoever is on board, let's go. I got the places to take us.
Listen, when you were talking, my mind was wandering to the professor who is in charge of the international program, who takes her students all around the world all year long. The pandemic killed her. She couldn't wait. She was chomping at the bit to get out of there. So,
speaking of killing, if I start another business, my wife will kill me. So Dotan, I'm out on that one.
For a while.
But I love the idea. Yeah.
For a while. Yeah. So I think these are all fantastic ideas. Could you please tell me a little bit more about your mission statement and how this all ties in to your future plans for education? You talked about international students. You talked about age-related learning with adult learners and young children. What else? What else is in the possibilities?
Well, I think that you always want to also monitor and understand what you do, right? And when you have a class in person, sometimes it's just enough to get into the class, take a look for 5 minutes and understand if this is working or this is not working. But when you go to digital, it becomes a challenge. But I'll tell you the truth, it becomes an amazing opportunity as well. Because when you do it online, there's always a computer there as well in the class. And the computer can do amazing things that they cannot necessarily do in person. They can actually analyze the engagement, and are the students having fun? Are the students learning? Are the students engaging? Are the students giving feedback, getting feedback? We can get into a world where the admins, the professors, the leaders of the educational institution can get immediate data and analytics on what's going on and then make decisions fast. And this will create, shorter times for change, shorter times for improvements. So this is a really interesting space that we at Clickto also looking at, where, we call it engagement metrics, but what does it mean? What do engagement metrics mean? And this is another discussion that we'll have here as part of the show with some experts from the field and people, and also people that are doing this in big technology corporates that are dealing with this question. And I think the solution for this will be groundbreaking for education.
Groundbreaking, because in academia, we spend so much time assessing our work. It's very work and time intensive. So if you have another way to take that burden off of our shoulders, many, many professors around the world would welcome that. But let me switch over and talk a little bit about large corporations, where the money comes from, big business. Do you think that with all of the changes now that we're talking about, that they will want to take a bigger role in education? And is that kind of a threat to the educators that corporations would come in?
Dotan and I believe we don't see it as a threat. We would see it as an opportunity, an opportunity to work with these bigger companies that certainly have deep pockets, of course, and then have deep thinkers who, given the right lens, can see how far and their dollars can go. And some of their thinkers can help us as well. So I don't think we necessarily see it as a threat. I certainly see it as endless opportunities to partner up and democratize education and make an impact.
I think that, education, we can look at education as a product as well. Obviously it's a very different product, a very different kind of service. Education is a product that has cost and has value and a bottom line. And, when there's a good product out there, how do we know it's a good product? That people come back and return and repurchase and refer others to buy it, right? So if corporates, if big money is going to be in education, they have to deliver a really good product. And if it will be a good product, then I don't mind who's really behind it, because at the end of the day, if I enjoy my educational program, if I get good results out of it, if it's what I was aiming for, then I get a good product. And there's going to be a competition. Competition is awesome. It's great. It's perfect. I think there needs to be more and more and more competition in education, and especially now. And there is I'll take it to a different angle. We speak with enrichment providers. We speak with training companies for adults, and that are brick and mortar. And they are looking at what's going on Google. When you search, I want to learn coding, I want to learn engineering, I want to learn arts. And now people get all those offerings of do it online with me, do it online here, do it online there. There's a lot of competition online. So they have to ramp up their game and get into the field and be there as well, which will do good for everyone. It's challenging. It's kind of a threat for the beginning, but we are here to help. We are here to take it from being a threat to take it to being an opportunity.
So all's well that ends well is what you're saying.
All's well that ends well. And one last point, back to that 1 billion, for those enrichment providers and those companies that we're talking about in the adult space, just think about getting 1% of 1 billion, of the learners out there. And you've got yourself an impactful and probably really cool business that you can do online. So let's do this.
Let's do this. So if you had one thing to say, we've been speaking now for about an hour. So if you had one message to deliver to our growing community out there, what would it be?
So in when the Washington Nationals won the World Series, their manager, the slogan was "Go 1-0 today." And for the enrichment providers and the professional development courses, the CEOs out there who are thinking about going online, you can go 1-0 today by joining this community, because we're going to be on this journey together. It's a small step. We've just taken it in the last, 55 minutes together, but you can go 1-0 today, join the community. And again, I guess I'll go back to that. Let's do this together.
Great. Dotan?
I'll refer to your question about the threat. I think don't worry about online education. Don't look at it as a threat. Don't look at it as an obstacle on your way forward. Look at it as an opportunity. We are here to help. We're here to take you hand by hand. We're here to get you in front of the world. So this is an opportunity. Take it all the way.
Wow. I love the idea of future possibilities, all for the good, all for the good for everyone. So Josh and Dotan, I can't thank you enough for sharing what you shared with us this morning. And those of you out there on our Facebook group, would you please, join it and sign off from Facebook? And we hope to be seeing you again and hearing from you again. Future Wednesdays at 11:30 in the morning. We will not be airing the next 2 Wednesdays, but we will let you know when we're up again with these exciting guests that Josh and Dotan are bringing here. And I want to say, gentlemen, good luck at the seminar in San Diego, and do
Thank
us
you.
proud.
We will. We promise.
Okay. Thanks again. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.